Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ernest Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. It is a loaded college basketball slate this coming up Saturday, and one of the biggest games of the day is in the Big Ten with the Indiana Hoosiers in desperate need of a win, traveling to Champaign, Illinois to face the Fighting Illini. This is a matchup that has big implications for both of these teams. For Illinois, they're trying to stay in the Big Ten title race. They're a couple games back of the Wisconsin Badgers for the lead in the Big Ten standings. And Indiana, even though their record isn't all that bad at 12-7 and 4-4 in the Big Ten, they have to get a big win soon to put on their NCAA tournament resume to help them out, because they are 0-6 in quad one games, and that currently has Indiana out of the NCAA tournament field. They're like 100 in the net, so the Hoosiers are not making any bracketologists feel like they belong in the NCAA tournament. And Mike Woodson is facing scrutiny for the first time ever as the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. He had a really good start to his tenure, having the Hoosiers make the NCAA tournament in his first season as head coach, and they were able to make the tournament last year off the backs of Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, and they were a 4 seed in the tournament. But this year, things are not going as smoothly. In Illinois, they've had up and downs as well with the Terrance Shannon situation, but Brad Underwood has found a way to work through that, and Illinois has been winning basketball games with and without Terrance Shannon, but Terrance Shannon is back now. So the Fighting Illini, even though they are coming off a tough loss to the rival in the Northwestern Wildcats, they should be primed and ready for this game at home. But the Hoosiers do have an advantage in this rivalry, because Indiana has won the last 3 games in the series with Mike Woodson as the head coach for the Hoosiers. They won in 2022 in the Big Ten tournament 65-63 to help propel Indiana into the NCAA tournament. Then Indiana knocked off Illinois on the road last year, 80-65, in one of Indiana's most impressive wins last year. And then they squeaked out a win over Illinois at home to sweep the Fighting Illini last year. And Indiana leads the series 96-91, but Illinois is in much better shape than Indiana right now. And as you can see, the FBI predictor gives Illinois a 93% chance to win this game. I don't blame the FBI predictor for having Illinois favored by that much, but I think this is going to be a very competitive game because Indiana has had the entire week off. They've got a lot of soul searching to do ahead of this Illinois game, and I think that they're going to come out firing on all cylinders and play very hard. And the season has been a mixed bag for Indiana. They started out with a lot of close wins in the non-conference. Then they lost to UConn in embarrassing fashion, beat Louisville, Maryland, and their only road win so far is at the Michigan Wolverines, who is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten this season, if not the worst team so far. And then they got blown out against Auburn, lost to Kansas in a close matchup there at home, but then they got blown out at Nebraska. Then Indiana lost to Rutgers as well on the road, but Indiana was able to beat Ohio State and Minnesota. But then they got destroyed against Purdue, and they lost to Wisconsin by a decent amount as well. So Indiana definitely is struggling against most of the best teams they played on their schedule. Losing to Rutgers is not all that great of a sign, but they do have wins over Ohio State, Minnesota, 2 teams that are decent in the Big Ten this year, but they were both at home. Looking at Indiana's roster, they've got talent. That's not the problem for Mike Woodson, but the roster construction is absolutely horrible because Indiana doesn't have enough guards that are producing. Malik Reneau is the best player on the team for Indiana, at least statistically, averaging 16.5 points per game and 6 boards. He's been one of the most improved players in the Big Ten from last year. Khalil Ware, the transfer from Oregon, he's probably Indiana's best NBA draft prospect. He's in a lot of mock drafts in the first round as of now, and he can shoot the 3 as a 7-footer, and he's got a lot of NBA skills, but he is banged up, but he should be able to play in this game. Mackenzie Mbako is the other player for the Hoosiers that has showed up on some NBA draft boards, a former 5-star recruit. He's averaging 10 points per game and 4 boards, but as you can see, all of those players are in the front court for Indiana. Trey Galloway is the Hoosiers' best guard, averaging 10.5 points per game and 4 assists, which is solid, but his 3-point shooting has taken a massive step back this season. And whereas Illinois had the problems with Terrance Shannon, Indiana's had the problems with Xavier Johnson because he got hurt for the 2nd straight season, and now Xavier Johnson's picking up flagrant fouls. It's all in his head right now. He's back out there on the floor, but he got benched by Mike Woodson for those flagrant fouls, and you can just tell he's not playing well. He's averaging a career-low 8 points per game in college basketball. He never averaged that few points at Pittsburgh and so far in his Indiana career in college basketball, so he's got to get back on track for Indiana to have any shot this season. Anthony Walker's averaged 7 points off the bench. CJ Gunn's averaging 4 points. And then a few other bench players as well for Indiana chip in a few points like Pate Sparks, Gabe Cupps, and Caleb Banks. But Indiana is also missing Ja'Kai Newton. He's out for the season with a leg injury, and that hasn't helped Indiana either because he's a guard. So the Hoosiers are definitely thin in the backcourt. And that has caused Indiana to have a lot of issues beating a lot of quality teams this season, especially teams with good guard play. To move over to Illinois, like I said, Brad Underwood's done a really good job as the head coach of Illinois, especially the last few years. The turning point in his tenure was when he had Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn. Ever since then, he's been able to bring in some talent through the portal. Matthew Mayer really helped out the Baylor transfer, and Terrance Shannon, the Texas Tech transfer, who's still at Illinois right now. That's made Illinois a much more competitive team in the Big Ten, and they've actually been one of the best teams in the conference the past few seasons. And this year, a lot of people thought that they had a shot to be solid, but I think they have overperformed expectations compared to where people had them in the preseason so far. They lost to Marquette in the non-conference, but Marquette's really good. Then they won at Rutgers, something that Indiana failed to do. But then they lost to Tennessee, but got to win over Florida Atlantic, which has aged well on their resume. Then they knocked off Missouri and Northwestern, but then they lost at Purdue in close fashion, only by 5 points. Very impressive performance. They lost to Maryland at home. That was a tough loss, but that was without Terrance Shannon. But he is back now after the allegations against him got settled. Then they were able to knock off Michigan on the road and Rutgers, but then they lost at Northwestern. That was tough. It was the first road game for Terrance Shannon since his return to the lineup for Illinois. But now that they're coming off a loss at Northwestern, you know Illinois is going to want to go out there and give it 110% to get a big win at home and keep themselves in the top 15 of the AP poll, because if they lose to Indiana as well this week, you know they're going to slide down from that number 10 spot, probably down to around number 20. And again, they want to stay in the Big Ten title race as well, keep up with Wisconsin and Purdue. If they lose another game, that would make it very difficult for them to stay in the Big Ten title race. And plus, Indiana's beaten Illinois 3 times in a row, so you know Illinois is going to keep that in mind. Terrance Shannon Jr. is averaging 20.5 points for Illinois, and that's where Indiana's going to have problems because the Hoosiers do not have a guard outside of Xavier Johnson that can even remotely shut down Terrance Shannon. If Xavier Johnson is continuing to play as poorly as he has been for the last few weeks for Indiana, then Terrance Shannon is going to have his way. Yes, he's coming off a few games missed, but he's still playing well. He has been coming off the bench recently for Brad Underwood, but you know he's going to be inserted back into the starting lineup as he continues to play better, and all that gets put behind him. Marcus Damask is averaging 15 points per game. Coleman Hawkins is averaging 12 points per game. Quincy Guerrier, the Oregon transfer, is averaging 12 points per game, and all these guys can shoot. That's the thing that Indiana don't have either. Indiana does not shoot threes very well. Illinois does. Luke Goody's averaging 8 points per game. He's a really good three-point shooter, and a guy like Dane Danger, he's not even playing as much this season at the center position for Illinois because he's more of an old-school type of big, whereas Illinois is going with a more modern style of play. Illinois has moved away from a Kofi Cockburn type of center, and they're putting Coleman Hawkins at the 5, and with him being able to knock down threes and everybody else on the roster can shoot threes at a high rate, it makes Illinois a very dangerous team in the Big Ten, especially based off the performances that they've done against their opponents this season. So who do I think is going to win this Big Ten battle on Saturday afternoon? I believe that Illinois being favored is definitely valid because they're at home. They've been playing better than Indiana right now. They've got the three-point shooters. They've got Terrance Shannon back. They're trying to work him back into the lineup. And if Terrance Shannon continues to get better and better off the time that he has missed, and he can get back to being one of the best guards in the Big Ten like he is, Illinois is going to be one of the best teams in the conference. They already proved that they could be a solid team without him, but with Terrance Shannon, they are a very dangerous team in the Big Ten, whereas Indiana, they're just going through some issues right now with Xavier Johnson not playing good basketball right now, off missing a lot of games the past 2 years with injuries and some flagrant fouls as well. And Indiana is the most penalized team in college basketball with flagrant fouls. They're also a very foul-prone team, which has not helped the Hoosiers in Big Ten play lately. And Illinois, they knock down their free throws at a much better rate than the Indiana Hoosiers do. Illinois is a better three-point shooting team than Indiana, but I do believe that since Indiana has had a week off of college basketball to kind of get their head right, Mike Woodson is going to have the Hoosiers come out there and play at a high level because Indiana is in danger of missing the NCAA tournament. They can't rack up some big wins, and they've beaten Illinois 3 times in a row, so I think that's going to give them the confidence to play fairly well. To Indiana's credit, they put up a fight in a tough environment at Wisconsin last time out, but I will go with Illinois to get a bounce-back win after their loss to Northwestern and beat the Indiana Hoosiers 81-75 for Illinois to get their first win over Indiana in 2 years, and for the Fighting Illini to stay in the Big Ten title race. It should be a very solid game. I think it will be one of the better games in college basketball on Saturday, but I do believe that the Fighting Illini will prevail over the Indiana Hoosiers 81-75. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about this college basketball game between the Indiana Hoosiers and the Illinois Fighting Illini, and whether you believe that Indiana can get their first quad one win of the year and help Mike Woodson get Indiana back on a path to possibly make the NCAA tournament this season, or whether you believe that Illinois, now that they got Terrance Shannon back, they're going to be able to outrun the Indiana Hoosiers and get a big home win to stay in the Big Ten title race. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.